Good early Sunday afternoon. This is a quick weather update on Tropical Storm Milton, which will become Hurricane Milton at any point. This is recorded just before 2 p.m. Eastern Time, Sunday afternoon. So Milton continuing to intensify, organizing over really the past, say, 12 to 24 hours. And you can see right now, just that appearance on satellite is pretty impressive, and it is continuing to intensify. As of this time, it has maximum sustained winds of 65 miles per hour. And that is going to increase to hurricane status again at any point. It's possible that happens in this video. If there is an upgrade, I'll let you know. This system is pretty small, so that means that it can fluctuate in intensity pretty quickly, and we are expecting that to happen as the system continues to intensify. It should rapidly intensify, especially as we move toward Monday afternoon through, say, midday Tuesday. This could go from a Category 1 hurricane all the way up to maybe a Category 3, possibly a Category 4, which we'll talk about those details here in a minute. But regardless of that number associated with Milton, whether it's a Category 2, 3, 4, this needs to be taken seriously. So this system is going to travel toward some really warm waters. And speaking of that motion, there has been a pretty noticeable southward jog in Milton over the morning hours today. It's actually moving toward the east-southeast at about 6 miles per hour, and that has actually impacted the trajectory, kind of the path of where this system could move, making landfall by Wednesday. So as Milton continues to move east-southeast, eventually it's going to make more of an eastward and eventually an east-northeastward motion over the next 48 to 72 hours. It's going to kind of get picked up by a trough as well, which should go from that east-southeast to east-northeast to more of a northeast motion from today through, say, Wednesday, Thursday time frame. And as it does that, it's going to travel over some very warm water temperatures in the Gulf of Mexico. And that's going to help contribute to that possible rapid intensification. So when you have those really warm water temperatures, you have a lack of wind shear, that's really going to get this system going, and that's what we're seeing right now in the southwestern Gulf of Mexico. This is a look at those water temperatures, the sea surface temperatures, degrees Celsius. So where it's at right now, say the water temperatures, we'll say 84, 85, 86, and it's going to work its way off toward eventually the east-northeast, and it's going to travel just to the north of the Yucatan Peninsula and north of Cuba. And notice that those water temperatures there are really warm. Where you see those 29s, 30s, 31s, that's where we have those water temperatures. It's like bath water. So the water temperatures are going to be 85, 86, 87 degrees, and that little kind of that warm current or that warm eddy that Milton's going to travel over really could help augment or exacerbate that intensification. And there's that window possibly on Tuesday where this system could ramp up to a Category 4 hurricane. Again, don't focus on the number, just because the impacts are going to be pretty significant. No matter this being a Category 2, 3, or 4, it's going to cause some significant storm surge as well as flooding, wind, tornadoes, which we're going to talk about some of that here in a couple of minutes. This is the latest forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. Every outlet that you see is utilizing this cone or this forecast, but it may just look a little bit different in terms of the color or the background map. It could look a little different, but the data is exactly the same. We utilize the National Hurricane Center, the best meteorologist in the world for tropical cyclone forecast. So here at First Hand Weather, very appreciative for all the men and women who work tirelessly to put out these accurate forecasts. And this is the cone that has noticeably shifted south, and it's gotten a little bit smaller as we get nearer to this making landfall. And the main area we're focused on, which we're going to show in a minute, looks to be right now somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers. But again, notice the cone does go well north of Tampa. Pretty much almost the entire state of Florida is included within the cone except for the Keys as well as the Panhandle area. So it's possible that this center could make that landfall anywhere within this cone. It could be well north of Tampa, or it could be well south of Tampa. So don't just focus on the exact center of this cone, and just know that the impacts, even though this is a smaller system in terms of just that aerial size of it, the impacts are going to spread out well beyond that center of the of Milton as it makes landfall, and it's actually going to increase in size as it nears Florida, which we're going to talk about here in a minute. But the intensity, notice that it really starts to ramp up, again becoming a hurricane today, Sunday, and it's going to really undergo pretty quick or rapid intensification Monday into Tuesday. And notice by Tuesday morning, sustained winds 125 miles per hour, those maximum sustained winds, so that means gust 140, 150 possible. Now it's going to be over the Gulf of Mexico, not impacting the U.S. at that point, but it could impact parts of the Yucatan Peninsula, especially that northern shore, Monday into Tuesday, and then it's going to, again, kind of peak in intensity sometime Tuesday, whether that's Tuesday morning, Tuesday afternoon, yet to be determined, but this is likely going to be a high-end Category 3 hurricane. It could get a little bit stronger than that, which again we'll talk about here in a second. But notice as this system starts to work its way toward Florida, late Wednesday morning, early Wednesday afternoon, when there's that possible landfall, it is going to see a gradual weakening trend. It's still going to be a potent hurricane, but it could start to interact with a little bit of dry air, that trough that's to the north that's going to help kind of make it move from that east-southeast to more northeast. There's going to be a lot of wind shear with that, which could kind of eat away at the system a little bit, kind of weaken it. That is actually going to, as it weakens, it's actually going to kind of expand its wind field and its storm surge. So even though the system starts to slightly weaken, and I mean slightly, it's still going to make landfall possibly as a major Category 3 hurricane, but we could start to see those impacts really spread out across the state of Florida. So that's one thing we're going to focus on over the coming days, because it does look like most of Florida will see some impacts from Milton, and those impacts will start to be felt as we move into, we're going to say later on Tuesday, should start to see some parts of the western coast peninsula area of, so the western coast of the Florida Peninsula should start to see some of those tropical storm force winds, some squalls as we move into that late Monday, Tuesday time frame, and that will start to ramp up and work its way toward the hurricane force winds as we move into Tuesday night, Wednesday. So the impacts, even though this makes landfall sometime late Wednesday morning, early afternoon Wednesday, the impacts start to be felt well before we see that landfall. So that's something to keep in mind. And with all the rain that has already fallen and that will fall, with some of those gusty conditions, there could be some significant tree and power line damage as the soils are just kind of saturated. So that's something to keep in mind. Again, notice there has been that little tightening of the cone and that slight southward jog, and the models are also suggesting this. So we've had the NOAA planes in Milton. There are drones that we're now able to utilize within Milton as well. They're collecting all that data, and this is really helping the models. And with that east-southeastward motion this morning, that has really kind of shifted the guidance a little bit farther south, and the majority of it is indicating a possible landfall somewhere between Tampa and Fort Myers. That's where kind of the models are clustered together, pretty tightly clustered as well. So that looks like at this point, as of Sunday afternoon, where we will see that landfall. But again, it doesn't matter the exact landfall. There are still going to be impacts even if it doesn't make landfall near you and you live in the state of Florida. With this said, the southward jog and the consensus of the models, it's possible this fluctuates. It could go a little bit farther north. Maybe it goes a little bit farther south. So if you are looking at this and you see all those lines, which are the models showing where the center is going to track, and you're like, oh, this is well south of me, I'm good. Just please keep checking back, because this could shift over the next 24 to 36 hours, even the next, say, 48 hours. So there will be some fluctuations north and south with these models as we continue to get more data on Milton. The National Hurricane Center does forecast this to become a high-end Category 3 hurricane, which is what's probable. Some models do suggest this becoming a Category 4, and a couple are saying, hey, this could become a Category 5. And this would be in that Tuesday timeframe. Sometime on Tuesday, some models are saying, hey, this is going to become a Category 4 or a Category 5. Again, don't focus on the exact numbers. A high-end Category 3 hurricane going to cause the same impacts as a low-end Category 4, so just keep that in mind. Now, the models are also showing, while yes, this could be possibly a little bit stronger than what the National Hurricane Center is suggesting, but they're kind of taking the middle of the road approach, totally understandable. These models are also showing, hey, while this could become a Category 4 or Category 5, it does move into an environment that is a little less favorable for further intensification and actually kind of favors a little bit of weakening right before landfall. So again, this likely won't make landfall as a Category 4 or Category 5. It's probably going to be a Category 3 or a high-end Category 2, but don't focus on those numbers, because as this does start to weaken, that wind field starts to expand. It's going to work together with that little dip in the jet stream to kind of pull it northeast to really enhance some of those effects. So the winds start to spread out across the state, and then that storm surge starts to expand as well. So even though this could be undergoing a very slight weakening trend on Wednesday right before landfall, it is still going to cause significant impact. So please keep that in mind. Speaking of the rain that we touched on briefly a moment ago, rain's going to be a big concern with this. There's already been rain in Florida for the past few days with another system. Additional heavy rains coming, a widespread for the Florida Peninsula, a widespread 4 to 8 inches of rain is expected, with isolated amounts around a foot, possibly even higher. So flooding is possible. So not only storm surge flooding, but near the coast, but flooding from the rain as well. So this is going to be a big concern. Heavy rain for most of Florida outside of the Panhandle, and this will lead to some areas of flooding. And with that heavy rain and the wind, there's that potential for some significant tree and power line damage when you factor in those winds and those saturated soils. Some of this moisture could sneak its way up into as far north as around Savannah, Georgia. So there could be some heavy rain as well for the southeastern coastal parts of Georgia. That's something we'll keep an eye on. If this does track a little bit farther north, there could be some higher impact weather conditions for coastal parts of Georgia. So that's something that we'll continue to keep a really close eye on. With this system, because I know a lot of people are like, well, it's moving from, southwest to northeast, where are the big impacts going to be? So with this system, especially as it interacts with that dip in the jet stream on the northern side, kind of like where you have the eye, and on the northern side, that's where you're going to see some of the really strong winds, as well as some of that heaviest precipitation will kind of be on that north side of it, which would be the left side of it, which kind of goes against what you normally think. And then on the south side, so kind of the eye and on the south side, that's where the greatest storm surge will be, so potentially 10 to 15 feet. So keep a close eye as we get a little bit closer and we're able to kind of fine-tune that track. If you live near or just south of where that eye is forecast to make landfall, that is where there's that potential to see that highest storm surge. So again, 10 to 15 feet. If it tracks south of Tampa, still some storm surge, not going to be devastating. As devastating as it could be. If it tracks just north of Tampa Bay could see some significant storm surge values. So that's something that we'll continue to keep an eye on to get a more accurate idea of what the storm surge is going to be and where those worst impacts are going to be. Again, this was recorded early afternoon on Sunday. This is Milton, which is a tropical storm, now a hurricane. Milton is now a hurricane, so brand new information just came out. 80-mile-per-hour winds, moving east now at 6 miles per hour. So moving east at 6 miles per hour. Milton was just upgraded to a hurricane from the National Hurricane Center. 80-mile-per-hour winds. This is a Category 1, but again, this is expected to continue to intensify, possibly into and likely into a major hurricane as we move into late Monday and Tuesday.